r/ask Reddit. What is the douchiest thing you've seen someone do? Worked at a festival next to a funnel cake booth. Nice dude drops a 50 for the next 10 people in line to each get a free cake. 2 people take their free cakes gratefully, but the third is a middle-aged beach with a sour face. She wants all of the remaining 8 funnel cakes for herself alone. The dude in the booth told her no one wouldn't even give her one if she bought it, but for real, the fact she even tried is douchey as duck. Way to go, dude in the booth. Protagonist. One Starbucks at Christmas where people were paying for the people behind them, buying gift cards to use. Woman came through and asked how much she could get for free. Took about 20 minutes in a drive-through to take her whole order, basically cleaning out the gift cards, and when her husband in the passenger seat, who was embarrassed, asked her to throw a $5 bill in our tip jar, she pushed back and said they get paid here, they don't need it. Honest to God, I would have slashed that beach's tires. Wife and I had a couple over for dinner. I cooked a fairly complex meal. Drinks, beer, dessert. Right as they walked in they said they only had an hour because they had another dinner thing to get to after this one. Damn. I got annoyed at them just reading this. Should have just cancelled. I can't stand people who want to please everyone and instead of giving something 100%, they give it 10%. I went on a first date where they said they had a date right after mine, and I was only allotted 1 hour. Was thinking this was her way to back out in case it didn't work out. But number. She went directly upstairs and sat at a table with her next date. Number deleted. In high school, my best friend and I won tickets to a sneak preview of Superbad. The theater was super packed and some promo guy came out with a cardboard box of swag, handed some stuff out and set it down and walked away. This lady from the front row grabbed the whole box and sat down with it in her lap while the whole theater booed her and she left. I wonder what it takes for a person to think that's an alright thing to do. Apparently the same thing that makes someone demand 8 free funnel cakes. Saw this guy run a red light and almost hit an old man on the crosswalk. He stops his car to yell at the old man for getting in his way. The old man gave him the finger. This guy gets out of his car and starts squaring up. It is 5 PM on a busy road and his car is blocking 2 lanes. After 15 seconds of yelling at this old guy, he decides it was enough and gets back to his car and peels out. Doesn't have time to wait for the red light but had all the time in the world to fight an old man in the middle of the street. That's certified douche. A customer doing whatever he could to bring a poor cashier down to tears and then had the nerve to smirk because he made a cashier cry. Man, that reminds me of when I worked at a restaurant and this family belittled me and made it a game to make me cry. I fought it for a while, but I came out holding back tears and they said, "Oh look, the show's about to start." And I just turned on my heel back into the kitchen. My other tables told me later that the table had been conspiring to get free food by telling my boss how shitty of a server I was. My boss, however, told the table they needed to leave, and even followed them out to make sure they paid their bill. I obviously didn't get a tip from them, but my other tables tipped me extra. That's also the day I put my 2 weeks in. I couldn't deal with that anymore. I have season tickets to basketball for the college I went to. There is an elderly couple that have the tickets directly in front of me. They are super nice and have had season tickets for 40 years. At one game there was an Ashat in a purple shirt in front of them who stood up the entire game blocking their view. Standing is only acceptable in the student section. The older guy asked him to sit and he said no. I asked him to sit and he said no. Then another season ticket holder near us started to chant "sit down purple shirt." Soon the entire section was chanting at him, so he left. Everyone cheered as he left. You know, this might be the only story that ends with something like everyone clapped that's actually believable, since it's a bunch of college kids at a sports game. Fill up a water bottle with their piss and throw the opened piss bottle over and into a huge crowd of people at a concert. It was very hot too. People probably believed it was water at first. Why would you do that when you could just not do that? There is a not nearly small enough subsection of people that get off on being unbridled a-holes to their fellow human. I like to believe it's mental illness, but who knows? I was taking my lunch break outside at my old job, mall. A couple is walking up to the door. Wife with a double stroller. Husband looking at his phone. He opens a single door for himself. Instead of hitting the giant button that would open both doors so his wife and children could easily enter the building, she asks for help. He says nothing, still looking at his phone, and lets the door slam in her face. Definitely not the absolute douchiest thing, but I still get pissed thinking about it. He'll miss it when it's gone. He may not notice if he's still looking at his phone. Went to a house party and some dude had all of 2 beers before he tried to fight every guy or duck every girl. He yelled at everyone for looking at him, took offense at every word spoken around him. My buddy and I grabbed him and told him to cool his shit. If he calmed the duck down, I'd get him some food and a ride home. He somewhat agrees. As I stand up, my buddy calls down basement stairs and asks if I needed a beer. I was halfway through the sentence, "Yen man, thanks," before he clocked me in the side of the head. He thought we were talking shit about him somehow. I turn around and tap him in the mouth. He falls over and starts screaming that I assaulted him. "Someone call the cops, blah blah." He ended up running out the front door with a busted mouth. Literally an hour later he is on Facebook blasting everyone and me for bullying him. He got called out pretty ducking quick. The best thing is that this wasn't a 17-year-old at a house party. He's nearly 30. Biggest douche I've ever met. Call me a jerk, but I think that some people do need a tap in the mouth. Good on you. I used to work in an office with a guy who would run and tell the management about every single little thing people did or said. Any offhand remark and he would run squealing to the managers about it. The worst part was he acted like your friend to lull you into a false sense of security. Currently work in an office like this. Telling one certain person something is like telling the entire office. Not even anything interesting either. Mentioned one time I ripped the arm of my shirt to her, and that day I had multiple people asking about my shirt incident. I don't get why people act like that. I hate gossipy workplaces. The worst is when I'm going through a bad time, or I might have gotten in some trouble with the boss, and people ask if I'm okay, and I know for a fact they're just fishing for gossip. They don't really care. It's why I give everyone my ear but very few my voice. Nothing too crazy, but I was third in line at a gas station to pay when the customer at the register drops a $5 bill or whatever out of his pocket when he goes to pay. The douche in front of me puts his foot on the bill so when the first guy leaves, he can't clean up. So when the first guy turns to leave I say, "Hey man, you dropped some cash." The look on the second guy's face as he moves his foot to reveal the money was wonderful. I felt like a hero that day. Back when I was delivering pizza, I dropped a wad of cash, well over $100 of mostly the store's money, and this little old lady chased me back to my car to return it. I would have been ducked if some douche found it first. This old lady was checking to see if her ball pen would work. She tried test writing on the shirt of the girl in line ahead of her. That's when you test your pen by writing on her face. This really douchy husband of my wife's friend at a dinner ordered heated cognac. After claiming it wasn't warm enough for his refined taste, loudly so everyone could hear, he swirled it above a candle on the table to heat. Not that douchy, but everything about his screams "I'm a tool," and even this stood out. Oh man. That's the kind of thing that makes me turn my head 180 degrees away from someone. I could fill this thread with things this guy has done. It's a tad strange as he's a nice enough guy. Just one of those people that ooze douchiness. During college we had to give a short presentation of our paper to the 200+ person class. This presenter happened to be a student with a very noticeable stutter. The 2 girls sitting in front of me started to imitate him in a very cruel way, laughing all the while, and that too, openly enough for the student to see them. Finally someone loud whispered for them to shut the duck up, and they did. This can relate to this on so many levels. No matter what it is, if it's speaking or going to the gym, mockery and gatekeeping absolutely duck people's confidence. But that person telling those girls to shut the duck up, heroes like that are what the world needs. Make her boyfriend, who had been drinking, drive, because she had a headache. No, I've been drinking. This lady parked right outside of a gas station, threw her trash on the ground outside of her car, then went inside and stole 2 bags of Chex Mix. Then I'm guessing she consumed them while driving to the next gas station. Rinse and repeat. News broke out that a girl from a local high school committed suicide by jumping in front of a train because she was depressed with her relationship. A dude looks at her Instagram, says she's hot, and then says she should have dated me. I wouldn't have left her depressed. I saw a mother try to get her toddler run over by a city bus, presumably for that sweet settlement money. That was pretty douchy. This goes way beyond douchy. I agree. That is more along the lines of pure evil. I was in a bar where I am a regular. I am married. I was talking to a woman I know at a bar who is also married. Her husband was somewhere around the bar at the time. A lounge lizard kind of guy who's at this place a lot came over and introduced himself and managed to, within 30 seconds, work it into the conversation that I'm married and he is not. Lounge lizard, a ladies' man that frequents night spots where drinks are served, maybe part of the live music set, but usually the lizard is at the bar chatting up rich women, most often seen in a suit that was a fashion statement in the 80s. Worked in the gun department of a large sporting goods store. Guy comes in and wants to check out a shotgun we have on sale. I pull one off of the wall where they are locked up and behind the counter. Hand him the shotgun and he looks it over. Says he wants it, so I tell him I am going to check in the back to see if there is one in a box. There wasn't, so I come out and ask him if he was cool taking the one he had checked out. He immediately gets an attitude and questions me why I don't have one in the box in the back. I tell him that they just happen to have all been put out as displays, but they are rarely handled and never toyed with. He asks for my manager, who I happily call over. She starts dealing with a guy who demands that model of shotgun but in the box. I am forced to call around to all of the other stores in our area and ask if they have the gun in a box. None do, but I tell the closest store to just put one back in the box and place it in the back for the guy. I go back to my manager and the customer and inform them that I have found one in the box and the guy can go pick it up. Guy is not having that. He wants it delivered to this store. My manager ends up calling him the store manager, who wasn't currently at the store, to deal with this ducker. When the store manager gets there and informs the customer we cannot just have them send the gun over because of firearm laws, the guy proceeds to get in the store manager's face and tell him that he is an ex-cop. Guy left and never got his gun. If we had ended up getting it for him, I would have refused the sale because I wasn't comfortable selling him a firearm, which we were allowed to do. A guy hit on me and within 30 seconds mentioned his salary. Thank God my friend was in the bathroom. I was bailed out quickly. As a person who makes $2 million a minute, this annoys me. My brother gave me a framed photo of himself and his wife on their wedding day for Christmas one year because we couldn't find a nice photo of you : frankly, that's hilarious. I might get my brother a framed picture of me for Christmas. A married ex-co-worker who had a child would show me all the beaches he talked to on some weird dating apps. He also dumped money into cam girls to the point where he asked me for money for food. He has an $800 truck payment and a second kid on the way. No college education. He'd only say that he talked to the girls on the dating apps, but would never do anything. I mean, I believe that part because he looks like Gru and me, being combined. No one likes you, Billy. Most recently, it's the douchebag driving a black Mustang that revs the duck out of his engine through residential areas every morning, every evening, and sometimes at ungodly hours on the weekends. It's audible for blocks. I'm convinced he's a student because this shit only started around August-September when the fall semester started, and I live very near two campuses. I worked at a restaurant. We were slammed and a woman kept demanding that I get little things for her, even though it wasn't my job and I had other things to do. I would get one thing to her and she would look at me like I'm stupid and say, "In this other thing, I'm not your waitress." I had enough and finally just put the stuff on her table as I rushed by before she could make more demands. She told the manager on me. She said I swore, threw silverware at her, rolled my eyes, and stormed off. She did it to get free food. I'm sure of it. The waitress of her table later yelled at me, too, because apparently the woman also didn't leave a tip and that was my fault, which other waitresses overheard and denied was true. Everyone in this situation was terrible. It was one of the numerous times I had a panic attack in the bathroom at this terrible job. Back when the classic NES was being sold, we had a rare opportunity to get one as they were only selling 2 consoles. The catch? Wait outside of Target at 4 in the morning. We get there and we end up being the second person in line behind this woman and her husband. She turned around and asked us, "Hey, you also here for the NES?" To which I said, "Yeah, it's so hard to get these things, so I'm pretty stoked I get to buy one." She just smiled at me and said, "Well, hopefully everyone gets what they want." About 2 hours later an employee comes out and tells us, "Okay, we're going one person at a time, so lady and her husband go in first." 5 minutes later they're carrying the only 2 consoles. She looks at me and just said, "Yeah, we did separate transactions. Maybe next time you'll be lucky." Never got her name. But if she ends up reading this, duck you and your husband for being such shitty people. At the very least she could have told you so you didn't waste your time. Open house at my daughter's 2nd grade class. We were looking at her grades and noticed my daughter got a 0 on a homework assignment. My wife worked with her on the assignment. It was complete, so no reason to not turn it in. The teacher insisted she never turned it in. Swears she saw the blank assignment fall out of her book bag and thought it wasn't like my daughter to not do an assignment. Teacher being 100% condescending. Teacher says she is willing to let our daughter do the assignment for partial grade. My daughter sits right down and knocks it out. Teacher gave us a stack of graded work and we leave. I'm looking through the stack of graded papers to find the assignment. I turn around and storm back to class, showing the teacher, "Oh, I must have missed that." I used to work in an English teaching center on Hong Kong Island in 2012. Cut a long story short, one of my young students was a passenger involved in the dreadful Lama ferry collision that left 39 dead and 92 injured. She was actually on the ferry that sunk with her father, but the pair miraculously survived. Her dad had come in to drop her off to class the week after and told me the story while showing me the dressings on his leg wounds where he had sustained deep gashes trying to get him and his daughter out. He was a pleasant middle-aged guy with literally no reason to lie. Towards the end of the retelling he showed me 2 books in that the girl had borrowed from our library that had been in her bag during the incident. They had clearly been heavily water damaged. I naturally took them and told him that was no issue problem. Later on in the day I relayed the story to my boss, talking about the sheer coincidence and relief that the girl was okay, and simply told him about the water damaged books. They weren't particularly expensive, Oxford Reading Tree, so I expected him to naturally accept it. It was a week later when my administrator told me that the girl wouldn't be attending classes anymore. I was a little bit miffed at this, as the last exchange was very positive. I later found out that my aunt of an ex-boss had gotten my administrator to call up the parent while I was out of the center, demanding compensation for the damaged books. Naturally the parent was enraged by this and cancelled all further classes, losing what was previously a long-term student. Play music as loud as the phone will go while someone else is on the phone. Similarly, people who bring those Bluetooth speakers on the bus. I work in retail and one time I was the only one covering the front when the phone rang. I already had a few customers in line, but I picked it up like usual and said, "Thanks for calling. Can I put you on hold for a minute?" And this guy on the other end goes, "No. If you put me on hold I'll hang up and call somewhere else." So I stay on the line. But I couldn't tell him whether we had what he wanted or not because I wasn't allowed to leave the front. So he came in right before closing time and chewed me out. It went something like this: "Hey, why didn't you help me? I'm a customer. I'm important." And I went, "Hey, there were 3 other customers here first. If you would have let me put you on hold I could have helped you better." Then he comes in the next day and complains to the manager about me. He didn't do anything because this is the only complaint I've ever received. Only time I've ever had a customer make me cry, lol. A realtor valued my glass house at $375k when she had been paying for it as a 1.2 mil house on her taxes, and later it got revaluated at $720k, so the dude tried to scam her out of a ton of money for no discernible reason. Pretending to be handicapped at Disney to skip lines. AIDS, I got AIDS. My teacher in 5th grade told us this story about this old student who would take other people's assignments, erase their name, and then write their own. Naturally, this girl in our class got inspired, I guess. So she took mine and 3 other people's assignments, erased our names, and wrote her own. Our teacher didn't believe us when all three of us tried to explain we turned in our homework. I always get so pissed thinking about it because I still see this girl around. Haha. Like, if you're not gonna do your homework, don't try to steal other people's WTF. So this was a long time ago. Back when I was very young. My dad owns a motocross track, and so he knew quite a few people throughout the community that ride motocross. Anyway, we went into a local gas station after a long day's work to get some drinks. Once inside, my dad sees a guy he knows from the track and they start talking. I'm standing behind my dad and I'm watching this guy, and he literally reached inside the drink cooler, opened up a MTN Dew, drank about half of it, closed it back up, stuck it back in the cooler, and then walks out of the gas station. Now that I'm older, I know his family and they are one of the wealthiest families in our area. Just the way that he did it like it was completely normal makes my blood boil. Anyway, my dad and I get our drinks and go out to our truck, and I asked my dad about that situation and he said he didn't see it. About 9 years later, and it still makes me mad. Was working Christmas at my old pub. Christmas party from a nearby office is in. Guy gets the next round in. Pays with a 50. I take out his £25 change and he tells me, loudly, to keep it as a tip. I'm absolutely blown away and thank him. And after his colleagues all get their drinks and say how nice he is, he walks back to the bar for his pint and silently gestures for me to hand him his money back. Instant sadness. I decided to ruin his day by saying loud enough for his friends to hear, "If you really want to take that tip back, here you go, sir." What an absolute bastard. At Christmas. I forgot about this before my last response, but the teenager who stole a purse during church, if that weren't bad enough, the woman it belonged to only showed up to tell people her daughter was dying. So if they wanted to say goodbye to their friend, they had about 3 hours before the little girl was expected to pass. Pre-cell phone era. Showing up at the church was the only way to reach your neighbors quickly on a Sunday. When she realized her purse was missing, the poor mother broke down sobbing. She didn't have enough gas to get back to the hospital. Fortunately, someone pressed some cash into her hand. But even as a kid, it stuck with me. Adding insult to injury, the father of the dead child ended up doing the legal work to allow the thief to get treatment instead of prison time for another offense. He's a good man. But damn. Friend asked me to help him and his girlfriend move into their new apartment together the day after Christmas. I didn't want it, but he's a friend, so why not make it work? Everybody else bailed, but I spent the day helping him. The next week at their housewarming New Year's Eve party, they decided to invite a dozen people, but we weren't one of them. Biking to work. I was stopped at a red light behind a pickup. Truck is lifted, has big exhaust pipes up the cab, etc. I hang back so the dude doesn't have to pass me on the next block. Trying to be courteous. As soon as the light turns green, dude guns it, belching thick, black smoke from both pipes, rolling coal, as they say, right into my face. WTF dude. Uncalled for. When I was in high school, a classmate's little brother died. Forgot how. Think it was in an accident, and said classmate posted on Facebook that he was glad that his shithead brother was dead and was finally an only child again. Thankfully, people jumped on him immediately and said things like, "Dude, WTF is wrong with you? That was your brother." Then his mom posted a pretty angry comment ordering him to take it down and telling him that they were going to have a serious talk. Classmate was already a huge douche before this happened. This pretty much solidified it. My brother and I never knew our father, our half-sister, who we met as adults. Long story, set up a trip for all of us to reunite. My brother and his family, my sister and her family, and I all took off work, traveled 1,000 miles, and rented a place to meet our dad for the first time as adults for a week on Father's Day. We all get together and talk and share and bond. Aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. The whole time we are there. Dear old dad is quiet the whole time. We think maybe he's shy or not fully into this whole scenario yet and let it slide. So near the end of the week we go on a boat with one of my sister's friends for about an hour. We invite dad but he says no. He's not into the boat thing. Whatever. When we come back he's livid that we left him for that hour, when it's supposed to be a Father's Day get together. He throws a huge fit and ends the trip on a real shitty note, arguing with everyone and getting crazy. We spent so much time, money and energy putting this together. He can't say a positive word about it, but when we leave for an hour he flips out. If you've ever seen Talladega Nights, the character of Ricky Bobby's dad really reminds us of him. Also coincidentally from North Carolina, Will Ferrell's parents are from the same small town. When something is going well, he has to torpedo it so no one can be happy. I used to work at resale clothing store chain, where we were incredibly understaffed and the managers and customers alike were huge a-holes. Customers would let their kids run wild, throw clothes all over the place. All the typical douche things customers do. The hands down douchiest thing that happened, though, was when a customer had something he didn't want and went to just put it on top of a random clothes rack and I intercepted him, offering to take it for him and holding out my hand. And he just looked me in the eyes and threw the item on top of a different clothes rack before walking away. It's a minor thing that happened a while back, but it still pisses me off when I think about it. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.